Welcome to Cine Bijou, where we delve into the diverse creative world of independent film with your host, Ramon Wrights.
Hello everyone, so glad you tuned in. Every fortnight through feature explorations and insightfully fun interviews, we'll make Cine Bijou your destination for discovering hidden gems and supporting the voices of indie films that deserve to be heard. So grab your popcorn and settle into your seats as we shine a spotlight on emerging filmmakers, thought-provoking narratives, and groundbreaking techniques that redefine the art of storytelling. The final part of our look at this year's Hollyshorts Film Festival features a story that will tug at our heartstrings and commit us to a heartbreaking journey with a message of hope. The Dog is a short film written and directed by Australian filmmaker Danielle Baynes that offers a raw and compelling look at the often overlooked struggles faced by those who dedicate their lives to animal care. Set against the backdrop of a 24-hour veterinary clinic, the film centres on Claire, played by Grey's Anatomy and Private Practice star Kate Walsh, giving a powerhouse performance. Claire is a veterinarian battling not only the relentless demands of her profession, but also her own inner demons, making for an intense and dark narrative that is as emotionally charged as it is insightful. The Dog recently had its world premiere at the prestigious Bentonville Film Festival, founded by Gina Davis. There it received rave reviews for its poignant storytelling and striking performances. It also garnered favourable reviews from the veterinary profession around the world for its authentic telling of the struggles vets face in the wake of their demanding and often distressing job. The Dog is set to be showcased at the Oscar-qualifying Hollyshorts Film Festival, further cementing its place as a must-see in the festival circuit. So, for our final look at some of the films featuring at the festival, we sat down with Danielle for a deep dive conversation into the inspiration behind this film, the challenges she faced in bringing such an intense story to life, and what she hopes audiences will take away from Claire's journey. Tell me a little bit about yourself, your background, and what led you to pursue a career in the film industry.
Yeah, so I had a love of performing arts mainly from a very, very young age. I'm from Melbourne in Australia, and my family, both my parents were in the medical profession. My mum's a nurse and my dad was a GP. The arts weren't really in my family so much. But it was a very early passion. I think I was put into youth drama classes because I was quite shy as a child, and that just sparked something in me. And theatre in particular was my big passion. And I just continued that outside of school, all the way through primary school and then into high school. And I was obsessed with theatre and Shakespeare and, musical theatre, all of that. I just absolutely loved it. So it was very much one track towards the acting side of things. And then I left school. I finished school at 18 and I was accepted into drama school, so a 3-year degree at a drama school in Western Australia, which was quite a prestigious school. I suppose, Hugh Jackman went there, the most notable alumni. So that was really exciting for me. And I did 3 years there. And then I moved to Sydney and I just continued with the acting and with theatre being my main love. But of course, reality sets in and you're suddenly in a sea of actors looking for work in a small industry as Australia is. And I definitely felt a kind of creative need that wasn't being fulfilled as you're, auditioning and you're not kind of self-determining in your career. So that kind of led me to, I sort of created a theatre company. It was very experimental and we started to create our own work and devise shows and write and collaborate with the people in the company. And then I started to write a show basically for myself to perform. It was a one-person show. And I took that to Adelaide Fringe Festival, which is a big kind of like Edinburgh Fringe. I think they're sister festivals. And yeah, that was received really, really well at the festival. And then I toured it to Sydney Theatre. But essentially what that opened up in me is the writing side of things, which I hadn't done prior to that. And then I just decided to write a short film with a friend of mine, again, with it to be a vehicle for myself to act in. But then I started to learn filmmaking through that process, and all of like the technical departments of filmmaking, and the possibilities and potential of that. And again, it is like I slowly just moved more into the writing and directing side of things, and started to leave the acting things behind, because I was just really I fell in love with that side of it. So I started to make more films, and I didn't go to film school, so I had a lot to learn in terms of camera and visual design and sound and all of those aspects of filmmaking. But I think my strengths as an actor and writing the work myself, and being able to direct performance, which I think is probably an element of filmmaking that, as a director, that is potentially harder to learn, or you really, really need that experience to do that. But I felt really confident and strong in that area, and then I had great mentors and collaborators in the more technical areas. So it was kind of like, I suppose short filmmaking is kind of like its own film school in a way, in those first few films that I made, and that's kind of put me on the pathway.
I was actually just going to ask, as you moved from acting into writing and directing, um, which names sort of influenced you or inspired you as you started to explore that side? I mean, Australia is, forget Hollywood for a moment, but Australia is known for has renowned directors. Peter Weir comes to mind as one.
Yeah.
But were there any homegrown talents behind the camera that you look to for inspiration and insight?
Well, she's not Australian, but neighbours, Jane Campion, from New Zealand.
Oh yes, she directed The Piano, Jane
Yes.
Campion, and I think I saw one of her earlier films. Oh, we're talking a long time ago now, showing my age. Angel at My Table, I believe, three
Oh
part.
yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Love that. I love like the Janet Frame, who that is about, and who wrote the
Hmm.
book. Yeah, I actually did a monologue from that at drama school. So
Wow.
definitely, I mean, yeah, I think as a female filmmaker as well, you are looking at other women who are creating their own work in that regard. And I suppose, I mean, as a younger person, in like Baz Luhrmann was a huge, like, it's such an incredible talent to come out of Australia, in such a singular voice, and that was very inspiring, I think, as a young person, when obviously we had Strictly Ballroom and then Moulin Rouge, and that kind of spoke to my theatrical sensibilities. I saw how he could marry the world of theatre and on film. I'm trying to think of who else. I'm always so bad at when people are like, who is your favorite this actor or director or writer, because like separate works speak to me. But those two definitely come to mind in terms of maybe formative influences in some way.
Okay, so let's look at your film work then, your short films. I believe there's comments. There's also, sorry, I do have them written down here.
Oh, that's all right.
Because getting my age, you have to write everything down to
No.
retain as much memory. So there's comments. There's obviously the dog that we're talking about. Ghost
Yeah.
Fear, I believe, is another one, and
Yeah, and Cold Hearts was the
Cold
first
Hearts.
one.
Yes. So Cold
Yeah.
Hearts was your debut film, wasn't it?
Yes, that's
And
right.
and that's quite an impressive debut, because it competed in film festivals and won a couple of awards, Best Narrative Short, and you got one as an exceptional emerging artist. So
Yeah. Yeah.
tell me about Cold Hearts then. What was the film about, and what was your reaction when suddenly you were getting all this sort of recognition for your first attempt at making a
Yeah.
short film?
Yeah, that was actually, looking back, it was such an incredible experience. So that was one that I actually co-wrote and co-directed with Yolanda Ramke, who is an incredible filmmaker from Australia and a friend of mine. She made, I don't know if you saw Cargo, the film that was an Australian horror zombie film that came out a number of years ago with Martin Freeman. But
I've heard of Cargo. I've always just missed seeing it because I think
yeah,
there's now so much content out there, whether it's streaming or on the big screen. I'm finding it
I
hard to
know.
keep up, but I do my best. But I
No,
think
absolutely.
now that you've mentioned it, that's reminded me
Yeah.
to check it out. So
Yeah, it's a great genre film. But anyway, so we really wanted to make, again, we're both very into genre, so we wanted to make a Western. And yeah, we were both inspired by Clint Eastwood and Deadwood at the time, the HBO series, and we wanted to make an Australian Western. So it was quite ambitious, especially for a first film. But I think because you don't know anything, that's when you can kind of be blissfully ambitious and unaware. So we made that film in the Snowy Mountains in Australia, in New South Wales, which just has the most incredible landscape, and it's got all the elements of an Australian landscape, but then it has, obviously the snow and that wintry feel, which is, I think, unique and not often seen on screen in terms of the Australian context. So yeah, we set that film in the 1800s, and it was essentially a really insular story about two sisters who were dragging a coffin through the snow. And you don't know, well, you assume that it's their dead brother in the coffin. And it's kind of their relationship. You just sort of observe their relationship as they go on this journey. And then at the climax, there's a bit of a twist, which I won't give away. But yeah, so it was amazing. We had a small crew. We went out, we were in the mountains in the snow with all our gear and juggling, being in front of the camera and behind the camera. But it was an incredible experience, and everything that we set out to achieve visually and in terms of mood and atmosphere, I think we did, and I'm really proud of it. So yeah, it was great to have it received well at festivals and locally in Australia as well.
and what a challenge for your first film
Yes.
to film under those harsh conditions. I mean, you hear
Mm.
stories on bigger projects. The Revenant comes to mind about filming in the cold and the snow, and you picked that quite what
Yeah,
sounds like quite a physically enduring film.
I know it was, and we were dragging this coffin sort of across, 3 days of shooting, and yeah, but rewarding when you
Mhm.
sort of end the day and watch the rushes and it looks incredible, and yeah,
Mhm.
you've got what you wanted.
From reading about comments and Ghost Fear and then watching The Dog, all your
Mm.
films seem to have that similar theme about the human journey or the emotional personal journey. And there's various themes that you look at, such as connections between people and that sense of isolation and sometimes fear and other times hope. Are all of these stories drawn from your personal life experience, or things that you have read that you thought those are stories that need to be told? Why is it that your work is going down that path?
It's a good question, because often it's conversations like this where you draw those links and kind of interrogate it a bit. But I think definitely at the seed of the idea comes from something within me. I mean, I think one link with all the four films that we're talking about is that I do like to, especially with the short film format, the short film format has, it has some limitations, but it actually also gives you such, you know, it's just a great sandbox to play in. So I like to have my films and set my films in a place of climax, or in a place of where we're really with the character in a point of crisis, and we're coming into the middle of it, maybe in medias res, I think it is. So I think that's definitely what we did with Cold Hearts and Comments, which is also, a teenage, a few hours in a teenager's life from leaving school to getting home before dinner time, experiencing this assault of cyberbullying and social media torment. So, and then the dog again is set over that one night shift in the emotional kind of state of a vet's mind. And so I think that allows me to explore, I suppose, more of the kind of themes of fear and isolation and disconnection and in interior mental health issues. And I think it's definitely things that I've experienced in my life and I think about a lot. And then I suppose the second level of it is something that I have either researched or read about or has grabbed me, or I have people in my life who have gone through something that feels like it could be a universal experience that needs to be told, and where there are people in the audience who will resonate with that specific issue or theme. I'm thinking, I suppose, about my own experiences, and then straight away I'm thinking about the audience as well, and whether it's something that should be told or needs to be told or can relate.
We're going to come to talk to the dog then.
Yeah.
You don't pull any punches with the dog, do you? Because there's twofold. It deals with two things. That feeling of that necessary need to let go and grieve, and then the impact on veterinarians who provide care to animals. So my question to you then, I guess, is, I understand that the dog is more of a personal story for you. Are you happy to share that story and how that led to you turning this into a film?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. So the seed of that story, before I had even written this, put any kind of words to paper, was I knew that I wanted to tell a story that explored how animals help us through understand loss and grief. And that came from my first, very formative interaction with the idea of death was through a dog, as I'm sure for so many of us it is. And then I started to talk with, so then I was brainstorming about setting it in a vet clinic, to really be in that moment where someone is losing a beloved family member, pet family member. And I started to talk to vets that I knew, and they were actually the ones to bring my awareness to the fact that the suicide rates were so high for veterinarians, and in Australia, it's, I think, 4 times the average population.
Can I just ask, can I just ask, when you were presented with that fact, did that surprise you, or did you? Yeah.
It did surprise me because the statistics were so high. And I think another one was that nearly 70% of vets have lost a colleague or peer to suicide.
Wow.
And I think I knew about, I had family members in the medical profession. So I had an awareness about burnout and depression in the medical field. I mean, this was human healthcare. And I think in the media, that got a bit more attention, and dentists potentially, and then farmers were talked a lot about as well, and construction workers in Australia specifically. But yeah, I hadn't heard about vets, and that the statistics were so high. So it really did surprise me. And then I started to learn about the factors. And once you start to talk to vets and learn about the realities of the job and all of these different factors that contribute to those statistics, it definitely starts to make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some key differences in their line of work compared to human healthcare that I think really make this issue what it is. And then I learned that it was the same in the UK and the US and Canada and New Zealand. So, you know, it was immediately like I knew I had to shift the camera perspective in a way from the pet parents to the vets, and actually that's the story. But through the kind of very specific story of a vet's experience, I also knew that the mental health theme in general and talking about depression and burnout and suicide again is universal, and I knew I would be able to do it in a way where even if you didn't have this awareness about that specifically, that you could still find meaning in the message or in the story.
Yeah. So I watched the film, and the review will be coming out soon, and I'll send you a link soon. I won't say I enjoyed it. I'm not sure it's a film that you enjoy.
Yeah.
But I thought it was very well done, and it smacks you across the face and holds your attention to the end. And I mean that as a positive. So I got to say, I have to make this observation. I need to ask if this was intentional or just a perception. The opening scene where I believe the characters are Murray and Steph have to say goodbye to their bulldog, Dex. Anybody who's ever had a dog has gone through that and knows how heartbreaking it is. What's interesting about that is it starts off with Murray comforting Steph and comforting Dex and explaining, just saying, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. By the time the treatment, for want of a better word, is administered, it's Steph who's comforting Murray, kind of like illustrating the resilience and acceptance that children have. Was that something deliberate on your part, or is it something that viewers just tend to interpret?
No, I really like that observation, and it was deliberate for me. Since I've spoken to vets who have watched the film, and they've said that is a very authentic, from in their experience, authentic kind of portrayal. I think when you're young, again, it harkens back to the original seed of the idea being about this kind of being struck by loss and the permanence of that through a loss of a dog. I think the gravity of the situation and the shock of the situation is a lot for a child to take in. And in that situation for Murray, he's just completely overwhelmed with the loss in the moment. So I wanted this man to show that and to express that and to completely, let go in this room, because also that's the place that it happens. And that's what the vets are, juggling between being that kind of port in the storm in that moment, also doing their job technically, making sure that they, take care of that side of things. And yeah, then to have the child be the one who's comforting him, I just thought, that would ring true.
It would. We don't give enough credit to children, do we? Sometimes I think as adults that of just how resilient they are, and once it's explained to them, they're like, well, okay. And but they do also, where they look to adults for, well, how am I supposed to cope with this? They find their own strength, don't they?
I'd spoken to some friends about their own formative experiences euthanizing their pets, and often a lot of people told me it was the first time that they'd seen their parents cry. So that was something else that struck me, and I knew I wanted to incorporate that in some way.
Absolutely. So I mentioned that the film was very uncomfortable to watch. It pulls no punches, and again, I say that's a good thing. But there's so many things that are in this film I've noticed that add to that. For example, the fact it's a 24-hour clinic that that it's set in, but it's at night, it's dark, there's all these strange haunting sounds. It's really designed to reflect the opening, and Claire, played by the brilliant Kate Walsh, Claire's state of mind, just that constant darkness. Is that something you discussed with the cinematographer, Stefan Ducio, and is that what you were aiming for, to create this reflective atmosphere, if you like?
Yeah, absolutely. That's spot on. Yes, early in our conversations, I had found I think it was a photojournalist had taken these really emotive, striking photos during of vets euthanizing people's pets, either in their home or in a clinic, and they were just, complete slices of life portraits, and had so much raw emotion in them. And so that was kind of a starting point for our style and tone and atmosphere conversation. And I really think that carried on through the spirit of those photos carried on through. I also knew that I wanted to create this. It is a heightened atmosphere. It's not completely naturalistic, especially with the lighting, and even before we get into the surreal moment with the dog, because I knew I wanted to have that sound design, that soundscape playing throughout, so we were always in and out of her mind and her emotional state. And I thought that just to bring a bit more of that moodiness, and also how it feels to be in a clinic, both as a pet parent and a vet, no sleep, patient after patient. So I think that was definitely more of an elevated atmosphere, but I think it worked for this piece.
But I'll make this one observation, but I don't want to give too much away. The film's poster is actually a still is a scene from the film. And it's probably, I would say, the most emotionally hard-hitting. In getting to film that scene, how did you do, what was the direction you gave to Kate in playing that scene out? Because a lot of that is inside Claire's mind. It's the voices she hears, it's the instructions she's getting. Again, I don't want to say too much, but what was the direction you gave to Kate to play that scene out? And I got to say, how did you get that lovely, lovely dog to sit still throughout? Because I could barely get mine to stay.
Smoke and mirrors. Movie magic. Yes, it was a tricky. I mean, I knew going in that it was going to be a hard scene to do, and mainly as an actor, yes, because she has to track her performance, and when you're about to film a dog, even ones that are brilliantly trained and used to be on set and that sort of thing, you still don't know what you're going to get, so you have to be very ready to be very flexible and adaptable. But that was the asset, the brilliance of having Kate in this role, and with bringing her years and years of experience, and just her ability to drop in to these emotional states very quickly. And she just understood. She was just in the mind of Claire, the character. And so we were filming sometimes both of them together, and then we'd film the dog separately, and then we'd just film Kate, and we'd have an actor reading the lines of the dog. But it was very jumbled up. So she really had to, I suppose, like I said, track that conversation. And it does move quite quickly from, startlement to confusion to confrontation to then a place of struggle and acceptance, and then resistance. So there was a lot of emotional beats to hit, and Yeah, she did it brilliantly. And when there was the dog there and when there wasn't the dog there, it actually performance wise for her didn't matter. She was so dropped into it. And the dog, I knew I wanted a white dog. That was from the get-go. There's a few reasons for that, with the symbol of the black dog of depression being, something that's in our psyche, in our culture.
I was
But
going
I
to pick you up on that actually, but as
yeah,
you've
yeah, but I knew that the film was going to end on a note of hope, and that the overall message was one of hope. So this scene can be interpreted different ways, and people have had different interpretations of it. But I didn't want the dog to feel like a sinister shadow hanging over her. It was a meeting of yeah, two souls, really, both struggling. So
Mhm.
so yeah. And then that shot that you're talking about, that is the key up, that is the poster shot. I mean, I had lots of different ideas for how I wanted that shot, that top-down shot, to come together. But again, short film limitations are often your best asset, because all of these far-flung ideas and technical tricks that I wanted to try, we just didn't have time to do them. So, but what we ended up with, I'm really happy with, because it was just simple, and it's actually all that moment needed because of everything that had come before it. Yeah.
So before we talk about how it's been received, I just want to ask, because it's drawn on so many personal experiences, yourself and other people's, watching the film back, how does that affect you as a storyteller, a filmmaker, but also as someone who, like most people on this planet, is an animal lover, and a scene like that is probably the worst day of anyone's life.
Mm. Yeah, it does. It's funny when you're making a film, you get so stuck into the weeds of the technical things that it's like this process of getting so caught in the details and in the minutiae of what the sound is doing, what the edit's doing, as you're constructing it. But then you always have to step outside and view it through the lens of the audience. Oh, that's my process anyway, because ultimately that's when you know if it's going to work or not. And every time I would step outside into the lens of the audience, and it still does, which luckily now I can just watch it from that point of view because it's finished. But yeah, it gets me every time, from the beginning, the performances, especially of Jeremy Waters, who plays Murray, from that first scene. And funnily enough, his dad was a vet, and he grew up helping in the vet clinic, and so he was very, very connected to the material, and had this in terms of understanding his dad a lot better from doing this film. He told me. So
Wow.
there's just a lot. Everyone who worked on the film actually found a resonance with it and affected them in different ways. And so I definitely watch it and I feel all of the emotions that I think that the audience feel. But I also am really happy that it opens up discussion. I'm happy that I didn't hold back, I suppose, in terms of the subject matter, and I feel like it brings awareness, and it sparks discussion, and that's the other part of my mission with it.
Absolutely. It does spark discussion, especially on a much broader level than maybe anybody just seeing the title of the film can appreciate. It is about grief, it is about loss, letting go, and the impact it has on us, and how quickly people can be accepting, but how detrimental it can be as well. You could, as you said, you could interpret and draw from that so many different things that have happened in your own life. So yeah, congratulations on the film, because I know it's doing the festival run at the moment. It played at Gina Davis's Benton Film Bentonville Film Festival.
Yes.
How is I know you've said that the veterinary profession, people who've seen it have all praised it for its authenticity and for getting the message out. How has it been received generally in front of audiences and judging panels and the like?
Well, yeah, we've just started. So Bentonville was our first festival in June, and that was a great launch pad. And now the second screening is coming up at Hollyshorts in August. I think August 15th it's playing. So I'll be really excited actually to see how it's received there. And then we've got a few other festivals lined up after that. So we're definitely at the beginning of its journey in front of larger audiences. But yeah, I think it's probably like you say, it's a difficult watch, and I think programmers are probably wanting to balance the programming with something that can come after it that's not too heavy as well. But I think a lot of people aren't aware about the specific vet statistics and issues in the profession. So I think that will immediately, and because we interface with vets all the time, you know, they're part of our lives. So I think I'm hoping that people will take an interest in that.
Well, I'm sure they will. It'd be interesting to see how that's received at Hollyshorts, which I'm very envious of because it's playing at a landmark theatre, the
I
Chinese
know.
Theatre in LA. I don't know if you've ever been there to the Chinese
I
Theatre.
haven't. I
I, I
haven't.
I visited it once. I stood outside and put my hands in the handprints of all the legends.
Oh,
That
yes.
it's an amazing building. It's very surreal. But are you going to go to Hollyshorts and personally present it, or just going to sit back and
Unfortunately,
see what happens?
unfortunately, I can't
Mhm.
go. Yeah, it's a bit heartbreaking. It's just with how the timings worked out. But I will have people on the ground there as my surrogates to gauge how it goes and to experience that. But yeah, I mean, I'm the same as you. Just the thought of it playing in that theater. I keep looking at photos of inside the cinema and visualizing it. So I'm very, very excited. Yeah.
I can imagine. And Hollyshorts, some people might not know, is one of a series of international Oscar qualifying events, which means that people like your film, they may well turn around and say, well, we will consider this for nomination at next year's Oscars. Uh,
Mm.
that must feel a bit nerve wracking for you, point one. But the question I really want to ask is your film has a message, and it's one that's really important to you. Now, if it gets nominated for an Oscar, I would imagine that would be quite a thrill for you as a filmmaker. But which is more? I'm not saying it has to be one or the other, but which do you place more emphasis on? Your recognition as a filmmaker, or that all-important message?
Definitely the message. And I'm actually working with a lot of vet groups in America and around the world to screen the film internally. It's screening at a really, really large American vet conference in September. Again, it's just it's a conference, so it's an internal thing. But that almost for me is as big as for this film is as big as the prospect of these big film festivals and awards and things like that, because again, it's the film meeting its part of its target audience, meeting the moment and being discussed in real time. So I just feel really grateful that I can, and I think this would be my recommendation for any filmmaker who is interested in social impact type narrative filmmaking, or merging those two together, because I'm just grateful that I can have that aspect of the film being seen and the distribution, and then also have the the larger general public screenings and the festival recognition, which can then also lead to a lot more awareness of the issue as well. And something like the Oscars, which would be incredible and obviously as a filmmaker is an absolute dream, and can potentially lead me on a pathway to continue to make films and hopefully longer form films, which is my goal. But in terms of this particular story, I think any type of platform to have the message of the film out there is incredible, and you aim for the biggest.
Thank you for joining us on Cine Bijou, where we shine a spotlight on independent films and the creative minds behind them who continuously push the boundaries of storytelling. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to hit that like or follow button and subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can also find us on social media. Why not follow us on Threads, Instagram, YouTube and Facebook for all the latest news, insights and views from the world of independent film. We also love hearing from you, our listeners and followers, so why not drop us a comment or maybe even send us a message. Until next time, keep listening, keep supporting and help us keep the indie spirit alive.